Liz Lambert, I always love catching up with you. It's been far too long, and you have developed something since our last interview, which is quite uniquely Kiwi, very powerful, giving power back to the people. And tell us what it's called and what it is.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it is uniquely Kiwi, I guess, because sometimes even people from as close to us as Australia don't quite get it when we say it's the number 8 Workers' Union of New Zealand Incorporated. And then they say, number 8, and we say, oh, you know, number 8 wire, it's so adaptable and innovative and you can do anything with it. And to solve, you know, sometimes intractable problems, or what we like to think of as intractable.
It's a wonderful piece of kind of Kiwiana, isn't it? It was something that all those farmers used when they needed to put something together to rework an engine, to reattach something that had broken on the farm, to build fencing. It's a wonderful metaphor. Yes. What is it about, the number 8 Workers' Union of New Zealand?
Right, the number 8 Workers' Union of New Zealand, and you can go to the website, it's called number8.org.nz. So if you just go there, we've got the principles up there, we've got all of our union rules there, and basically what it is we were shocked and horrified through our work with Section 83. When we talked to people who were in unions, they said our unions didn't support us. Not only that, they were against us. They were pushing
through the country.
Yes.
They were pushing the jab.
Yes.
We've just published on our Substack at FreeNZ a letter from a mandated teacher, and she talks about 15 years of paying into the PPTA, the teachers' union, and how not one bit of support came from them, only coercion.
Yes.
So that's what you had feedback. Section 83, just briefly, you alluded to that. For those who are not familiar, you often do meetings online about that, don't you? What is that, briefly?
Well, Section 83 is kind of a one-man strike, if you like. Section 83 is part of the Health and Safety at Work Act. The worker always has, and I say the worker because they're known as the worker in that act, although employees are also covered, of course, as are contractors, as are pretty much anybody who, contractors and employees, if you like. But in terms of the employment situation, and of course the bosses were saying, well, you know, get the jab or no job, you can look at the jab as a form of hazard in the workplace, right? And so the whole of the Health and Safety at Work Act is concerned with identifying, mitigating or eliminating that hazard, okay? First thing you've got to do is identify it though. And that was seen to be the problem that most bosses wouldn't accept. I don't think they couldn't accept it, but it would have been, but we just got all this power and we've got this government behind us telling us we can just sack people who don't do our will. And I heard on quite a few occasions people say, oh, you know, no, the order is paramount. Nothing else matters. So they were saying employment law doesn't matter. They were saying Health and Safety at Work Act law doesn't matter.
The Human Rights Act
doesn't matter.
In the face of this COVID order, this mandate to be jabbed.
Yes.
It was an extraordinary time. But Section 83 could now open them up to a sort of lifelong double jeopardy, couldn't it?
Well, the thing is that Section 83 says that if there's a hazard on your workplace and you identify it to your boss, he or she has to investigate it and has to mitigate it or eliminate it. So and if they don't, you give them the notice and you say, I'm withdrawing my labour until such time as you can fix it, and then let's get back together again and away we go. So it's a section in the Act that I was only ever able to find one case, Van Cleef, I think her name is Marie Van Cleef. Fantastic woman, did all of it on her own. Another woman who wanted her breaks properly without taking off all of that the breaks had to be long enough so that she got, because she was working in the meat packing area. Anyway, the union was absolutely no use to her, and in actual fact was saying, you're on your own because you won't back down. So, and this was back in 2016, I think.
And so she took a case under this section.
Yeah, she did, but she took it all herself. She went through it wasn't just that section, that was just one part of it. It's a great little case, but what they said was that because she was saying the health and safety hazard is that I'm getting overtired. Yes. I've got these breaks that are in my contract, and it's been eaten into by all of this stuff of taking all of the gear off, and and also it was to do with something in the line. The line kept backing up, and then you had to do everything before you could take your break. And anyway, but they said that the answer to that was because it had to be immediate and severe, the risk, right? And they said it wasn't immediate enough. So it wasn't that it was, no, that doesn't work, it's not immediate. Now, a couple of employers actually came back and said it's not immediate, but of course it was immediate. I mean, the fact is you get the jab or your job's gone. That's an immediate threat.
Very much.
Absolutely.
Very much. Does it mean, as Section 83 in future years, that someone who has been injured as a result of an employer forcing them, it's take the jab or you lose your job, does it mean that person who's then subsequently been injured could come back to that employer and sue them? Is there that potential in New Zealand?
The Section 83 was kind of like, we called it Section 83 because that was sort of the most dramatic part about the whole thing. But there was also in the letter that we put together, I put together, for the workers was, it's a breach of my contract.
Yes.
I haven't got it in my contract for you to be injecting me. It's a look at the Health and Safety at Work Act. You have to deal with this. You can't contract it out.
Yes.
You're not allowed to insure yourself for it.
You can't contract out of it. You can't pretend that you're not liable to keep the work safe.
Yes.
The workplace safe.
So I was saying, you can't go. You have responsibility for the workplace, not WorkSafe, not the Ministry of Health, etc. It's your thing as a PCBU, which is the person in charge of the business or undertaking.
Yes.
It's your responsibility. And then there's another section in the act that says, and you can't contract out. And we also put in for good measure. These are if something happens to me, if I were to take it and something were to happen to me, Section 47 gives you the range of fines that are available.
Wow.
Right, so they start at $300,000, $600,000, up to $3 million in fines.
Goodness. So, have you had much success? Do you know of many cases where employers have backed down?
Well, I have backed it down, not on that letter. But they didn't say, well, it's hard to say really, isn't it? Because people don't come back to you and say, well, suddenly they decided they didn't want to do it.
But there have been big meetings you've run online. You've really helped people who were feeling bullied and small and insignificant. You helped them feel more confident. And in future years, there could be suits against employers.
Well, they've been warned. And you see, this is the thing about personal grievances. So there was a whole lot of talk too about the 90-day now, because people are still taking in now, they're taking in their personal grievances, and the argument is, but it's too late, you were supposed to raise it 90 days after being sacked. But where they've got a problem is that under the Employment Relations Act, the personal grievance arises when it's brought to the notice of that there's something bad going on, when it's brought to the notice of the employee. Okay, so when they put in the Section 83 letter, they triggered a personal grievance. They all had consultation meetings because they all had a script to run from.
They
bosses.
did. Many people felt that they weren't listened to, that there was just a script being talked at them, and then they were out the door.
And that's predetermination.
Yes.
And which is another way that you can have a disadvantage or detriment in your workplace is that prejudging what's going to happen, predetermining what's going to happen.
Not giving a fair hearing.
Yeah.
But this, in summary, Section 83, or the Health and Safety at Work Act, is a very fascinating piece of legislation that in future years could throw up court cases. And we could have, as this whole COVID narrative and this government both unravel, and the country turns our back on them, and then there will be employers who may quake in their boots at what they've done.
Well, funny thing is that we want to help employers never do it again by this union.
Let's get back to the union then.
Okay.
So this is great. That was an important aside because people need to be familiar with that Health and Safety at Work Act.
Yeah.
But I asked you, what is the purpose of the union and who is it going to help? Let's go back to that.
Okay, so it's got the biggest coverage clause that you can imagine. Okay, not only is it every sector of the workplace people can join, but it's also people who are looking for work. It's also retired people. Businesses can come and support us if they want, as supporters of the union. It's $2.50 for those people. Oh, and contractors, of course. It's $2.50 a week for those people who are not employees.
Yes.
Okay. Once people are employed and waged, it's $5 a week.
That's very reasonable. And you said this sprang from the fact that when these mandates were rolled out, no union that I can think of, you may think of one, but I can't think of any union that stood up for the people, stood up for the workers. So how did this idea come about, Liz?
Well, of course, actually, I thought of it to a certain extent in the context of other unions doing something about what was going on, and then they pulled back because, of course, they have a deal with the government. I'm sure they have a deal with the government.
It's such a betrayal of the union.
How I thought about it in the first instance was in the context of what's called a PIN, a Provisional Improvement Notice, under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Now, that is kind of the collective form of a Section 83. And how that's organised is, and it's very well put together under the Act, under Part 3, is work groups. And it's a part of the law. Work groups have to be available depending on how many workers you have in the workplace.
And what's the relevance of that? What is a work group?
A work group is basically to keep an eye on is the workplace a safe and healthy place.
So it's a watching group that watches over on behalf of the workers.
Yeah, on behalf of the workers.
Okay.
And say a new process was introduced, the work group should be involved in that and should be educated in what's happening. And if they see that there is a problem, like it could be that the hours of work are extended too long.
Yes.
It could be it's just a bad piece of machinery. It could be a dangerous chemical.
You would go to the work group and tell them.
The work group would talk about that with the boss and try and find a way to fix it. If it's an immediate thing, now this is what should have happened in Pike River Mine. You've got gas in the mine, methane gas, right, which was what blew it up. Apparently, there were many instances of that gas being too high.
Wow.
The union, which was headed at that stage by Andrew Little, denied that there was anything going wrong in that mine, plus other mines, right?
I did not know that the union at that time was headed by Little.
It was.
Really?
Because people focused on the political, didn't they? They thought, who was the Prime Minister at that time? It was John Key, right? But the person who could have done something, who could have made that mine safe, were the people, were their union. Because they could have issued a provisional, well, what they do in the mine is they just walk out. They say, it's too high, we're out, right? That didn't happen because they weren't organised into work groups, and who could have done it officially under a PIN, a Provisional Improvement Notice. It's down tools until the workplace is safe.
So take us back to these, that's extraordinary, Liz. Take us back to these work groups that's set up under
the Health and Safety at Work Act. Now, that was 2015. My information is it was set up specifically because of the failures at Pike River Mine.
Right. So we have these work groups. Now take us back into the union that you are setting up. You thought,
right,
okay, there's a need, and there's a need for something that will never let the New Zealand worker down again.
Yep.
How did you come up with something so all-encompassing? How did you even think anything so audacious could work?
Well, one day a lawyer called me and said, I'm not vaccinated and I'm sick of what's going on in the court. I don't have, of course, they didn't go as, because the courts are, you know, they know the law. So they didn't try vax passes, but they said if you're not vaccinated, you have to have all of these tests. Now, she was I think she might have been a duty lawyer, and they're vital, you know.
They're the ones who help people who can't afford for a lawyer.
You know, it's like they're the people who sit outside the courtroom and say, are you okay? Do you need a lawyer?
Yeah. And
that's your first, you know, help. Yeah. Now they get stick, but they're very skilled actually. They're very skilled. And they probably don't charge enough for some of these snobby lawyers, you know. So anyway, she called me and said, I'm afraid I'm going to get censured by the Law Society because there's so much difficulty around this, having this test. You know, you're supposed to have it so many hours before, and then I've got somebody who turns up, you know, my client turns up, I can't get there because I can't be let in because I haven't had the test, and da-da-da.
And the New Zealand Law Society, the New Zealand Medical Council, they didn't stick up for their lawyers or doctors any more than the union stuck up for those workers.
They didn't.
They all tried to do the government bidding and coerce.
There's lots of lawyers who've been vaccinated. It's tragic, actually, tragic.
So, getting back to the union.
So she said to me, what we need is a lawyers' union. And I was sitting there thinking, actually, I said, I formed a lawyers' union about a few years back now, but I can't remember what year it was. I said, I'll have a look at the, you know, I'll go to the Registrar of Unions and see what's going on. Well, I called them up and it was still registered.
Did it go anywhere at the time, Liz?
No.
Is there a danger this also could not go anywhere, the number 8 union?
Well, we've got about close on 800 members.
Wow.
They haven't all paid yet because, you know, it's kind of like, we'll see. But I want 1 million members.
1 million members?
I want 1 million members in this country.
How will that work? Let's blue sky that you get 1 million people signing up at $5 if they're waged or $2 if they're not. How will that work then? So say, well, actually, if I'm not working, why would I want to be part of the union? Because
you want to be part of changing the world, don't you? You want to be absolutely, positively sure that they can't do any of these nasty things, including fluoridating the water, including putting us on a cashless society. Because who do you think carries out all of these harebrained schemes? The workers do, right? So we want to have people in all of the ministries, And the other thing that's a big health and safety issue in New Zealand is bullying.
Huge.
Yes.
And it's become so much worse under this government.
And the bullying is on the part of the management. So what we want to do with the union is basically bring the workplace back into the power of the workers, right? Now, the workers aren't going to, they shouldn't actually have to strike. I believe that the threat of a stop work while these things are sorted out, a bullying manager, a dangerous machine, a dangerous chemical, dangerous atmosphere. Bullying and psychological harm is part of, it is recognised as a hazard in the workplace. There's a guy called Alan Hulse. He's been nominated for New Zealander of the Year a number of times. Had a company called Culture Safe.
He's a terrific guy. He's somebody who's really stood by people who've been bullied.
Yes.
I have read about him.
He's done some marvellous cases in the authority. He's going to contract to the union as an advocate, right? And he had a group of people in Oranga Tamariki who'd faced workplace bullying, workers, and it's no wonder. To me, no wonder Oranga Tamariki's got such a bad name. The workers haven't got time to work. They're having to deal with these terrible management people all of the time, right?
What, really bad bullying?
Bullying and, just bad stuff. So anyway, there was a wellness meeting for one of our members, our dear General Secretary, Erica. She was right on to it, and I said, under the Act, write to them and say, we've got this person, this person, this person. They're leaving the union they're in, they're joining our union. We want you to, they might decide to have you take the money out of their wages, right? And we're going to be coming around to organise, so in the near future, but we've just started up. So we've got these 3 members. So one of them is called to the wellness meeting. So I said, I'll go along. So go along as in go to the Zoom meeting, right? So I go along and said, it was very, very nice to them, very nice indeed. Said, I think it's going to be so successful. We're going to have work teams, and we're going to have, if there's, we can work everything else. I said, I don't think you're going to have very many PGs after we're there. But I'm here at the moment just to, to support our member. That was on the Monday. On the Thursday, Oranga Tamariki dropped their mandate.
Wow.
And I spoke to the head of the HR there. Yeah.
And you put that together? You put those 2 things together?
I do put those 2 things together.
What do you think was the difference?
I think they know they've got, they're not going to pick on individual workers anymore, that we are determined that we will not be allowed, one of the clauses and the special clauses that we will add into people's collectives is that medical interference with the body of a worker is not going to be on.
So what will the worker turn up with when they go to negotiate their contract? They will take something from this union.
The union itself will negotiate the collective. Yeah. Well, whilst people are a little bit worried if I go out of the union I've got and they've got a collective, and I join your union that doesn't have a collective, what is my contract? Their contract goes back to an individual based on a union contract. That's where it goes back to. So basically, they're back to an individual contract, but that's okay because eventually negotiating in each workplace where we've got enough people, we'll be negotiating collectives.
So how far along are you with all of this, Liz? Is it still partly a lovely idea?
It's in formation.
It's in formation.
Yeah,
right. So it does feel like that. So you're looking for members. What else are you needing to get this lovely idea?
Well, we've got the bank account. That was the big. Oh, it was so difficult.
What, because of the anti-money laundering thing?
Yeah.
In what way was it difficult? Isn't it extraordinary we're in New Zealand where now it's so hard to go to a bank to open an account?
One of the things was the bank kept having to have new people who didn't know how to do things as well, because the bank workers all got jabbed, most of them, I think. Whether the banks actually said we're having a mandate and I don't think they did. I didn't hear of any bank workers that came on Section 83. But I think that the societal pressure was enough to get a lot of people vaccinated, because everybody got into a state of hysteria.
Let's go back to the union. So where are you at with it? You've got a bank account.
Yeah.
You've got 800 members.
We've got a website.
And how often do you meet at the moment?
Well, we have a page where people should go first, a Facebook page called Number 8 Workers of New Zealand Incorporated.
Yes.
And that's the Facebook page. Now you can go there and there's a pinned note that will tell you the address of the website, but there's also a Google Doc to fill in there to give us your name, address, gender. Gender's just to do with, returns to the union. How many men and how many women have you got?
And so what is it you would like from the interview today? What is it that made you want to come and talk about it when it's still, as you say, birthing? It's partially a lovely idea. I can feel the plus of this idea. It is a sense of cohesion again in a society that's been so torn apart. In a way, this could be something that could bring so many Kiwis together to feel supported, to feel collegial, and individuals to feel powerful. But it still feels like it's very much in formation, Liz.
Everything started this way, though. Everything.
What do you mean by that?
Well, unions, fully formed unions didn't just, it's there.
They developed over time. What is it that you would like from today that this interview feeds into for people who are watching it? Do you want people to get excited and join in?
I'd like people to talk to each other about it. I'd like them to go to the website, see what our principles are. The other, of course, important thing is our union is absolutely non-partisan. In fact, if you are a union member on the executive, you may not stand for political election. Okay?
Right. When you say non-partisan, it's not party loyal to any.
It's got. In fact, we don't want anything to do with politics, because I believe that's what subverted the union movement, because the political parties they used the union movement.
Yes, they did. And Labour
took
took the unions for granted, as you said, possibly even corrupted the leadership, who simply didn't stand up for the very role they were put into.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it will be politically independent.
Yeah.
That's lovely. What other principles are there?
That we want to make workplaces happy and safe, and we want basically the worker and the boss, in terms of making that happen, to be on the same level.
And that would be a New Zealand to laud, wouldn't it? How does that happen when you have enough members, when you have that million membership?
Well, we don't need a million. I mean, I think that they can see already that we're not corruptible, that we arose to fight corruption, right?
That's quite
We're not there so much to get big wages or anything like that. Of course, wage negotiations come into it, but it's more the conditions of work. It's so that people can go to work every day and think, it's going to be okay, and it's not that they don't go to work worrying about their mental health.
So what say we have the World Health Organization, let's take another example, declare there's a monkeypox pandemic or whatever the next thing is that they go for, and we have to lock everybody down and everybody has to do what we want.
They can't.
How does this stop that?
Yeah, because the lockdowns, the shutting down of businesses, etc., etc. If people if the unions or workers or bosses had have looked at that piece of legislation, and especially at the orders, they would have recognised that they didn't have to do any of it. It was always up to the CEOs, and that's why Jacinda's always said, I didn't make anybody do anything.
I didn't force it, absolutely.
But the actual strength of the union and its organisation is from the workers themselves. In the workplaces, they know the workplaces, they know what the problem is, and it's not usually money. You know, teachers, for example.
Yes.
When they had their negotiations, they didn't even, they didn't look at the conditions that teachers were working under. You know, too much work, bullying by their bosses. You can't keep up with it. You can't keep chasing money and ignoring what the reality is of the workplace.
What if employers fight back and say, no, we don't want anybody to employ anybody who's a member of this powerful number 8 workers union?
Yeah, well, then they will be fined in the courts. There's laws against it.
And what about employers being able to enjoy the benefits of being part of this? How does that work? You mentioned that at the beginning.
Well, I think that their businesses were wrecked.
Yes, they were.
You know, that apart from the corporates, their businesses were wrecked.
The mum and dad employers have really suffered under this COVID rollout, under this government, and they saw how powerless they were. So are you saying if you bring them in, then they can be a body supporting each other?
And also there's tons of people who are self-employed in New Zealand or only have 1 or 2 workers. They were the PCBU. They were the CEO. Under Clause 9 of the orders, they could make their own minds up about whether people were vaccinated or not.
I love the idea of this equality between boss and worker. And if the employers were in the union with the workers, there would be more understanding.
They're not in the union. They become a kind of a support role. So we could never have a situation where a worker, we supported the boss against the worker. We couldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. So
but you could have a situation where you could support bosses and workers against a government that's overreaching.
Yes,
is that what I'm reading right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So in that case, they would be on the same side.
Yeah. And I think having the wholehearted support of your workforce and making a safe workplace, wow, that's a huge bonus for a boss.
So back to my question, what is it you'd like coming here today? What would you like from people to do?
I'd like them to go to the website. I'd like them to read it. I'd like them to talk to other people about it. I'd like them then, if they are interested, to go to the Facebook page, which is the full name of the union, and sign up and hopefully start paying something to us.
Are you having group meetings online the way you were for Section 83 group meetings?
Our Friday Zoom has now been taken over by just for the union. Some back and forth with people about, they ask questions or tell us their story. But I mean, we're trying to keep it down to 45 minutes now.
Right.
Because we had Zooms that went on 2 hours, some of them 3 hours.
The Section 83 ones,
yes,
when people had questions.
Yes.
But are you getting excitement from the people who are coming on those Friday meetings?
They love it. They love it.
What is it they most love about it? What's the feedback they tell you?
That they feel hope.
Nice.
That they feel that somebody's doing something, It's not that we're never down. We're never down on our Zooms. You know, the people they sometimes come and tell us a terrible story, but they will then get the support. They will get an answer. You could do this, do this, you know, take this sort of action. We've got many, many weapons of law. The union is going to take to the employment court the matter of this, the employers shutting out or attempting to shut out people who are unvaccinated from jobs. Okay, that is unlawful under Section 23 of the Human Rights Act. Okay, because it and so we're calling that the Section 23 initiative, if you like, and we're getting a group of people together to get us evidence of all of that, and then we'll take it as the union for a declaration to the employment court.
If you can do that, that will really put this union on the map. That will really put, and also people joining up will put the union on the map. Will you have money to do that, Liz? How will you afford that?
It's not that expensive in this modern world, actually. You know, lawyers like to make out that it's tremendously expensive and you have to have fundraisers and da-da-da-da. The work of the lawyer is the most expensive part. We've got basically, if any lawyers want to come and join, don't expect to get rich, okay?
But if they want to donate to a rebuild of New Zealand, it feels like this is something that has within it a wonderful animus for rebuilding this country. For, as I said before, rebuilding a collegiality amongst Kiwis again. Will you keep us updated? I can see there's still work to be done, but as an idea, it is in utero, as it were, isn't it? It's not quite fully birthed, but it's growing. We're in about month 6 of the pregnancy, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Liz Lambert.
Thank you,
Lovely
Liz.
to talk to you.
Yeah.